We actually just launched a new page on our website that is dedicated entirely to family advocacy. And there are a lot of resources on that page, including links to some of our parent groups that people could join, either just to have some community of other family members, or if you wanted to be more involved, ways to volunteer to sit on some of our advisory bodies. We have an autism spectrum disorders advisory board. We have a developmental disability advisory council with a lot of different subcommittees, and that is a great place for families and people with developmental disabilities to get more involved directly with sort of the policy making and recommendations of the commissioner.
Welcome back to Finding Common Ground with Steve and Heather. This is the datability portion of Finding Common Ground, geared towards more of a one-on-one situation with our people that work within the intellectual and disability communities. And today we have the Commissioner of OPWDD, which is the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities. I'm so glad to have her here. I wanted to get a little backdrop on how I met the commissioner. She was kind enough to get into some of the advocacy groups that I'm a part of. As a parent, I try to get myself involved out there in the community, and she was participating in some of the Zoom meetings that we had, and I reached out to her way back, and I found her to be extremely transparent, extremely interested in moving the needle, which is what I want to do. And more importantly, I think that she's shown leadership in there since she's got in. And I'll let her go into part of that in a little bit on her background coming into this. But Commissioner, I'm glad that you're here today. I think it's so important that you're involved here. There's so many voices out there advocating, but unfortunately a lot of people out there still aren't being heard, and I do things a little differently. I think you've probably have noticed that along the way, where I'm trying to bring the advocacy and the voices to those that aren't heard, the single moms, the ones that can't advocate, the ones that can't go to Albany, maybe the ones that can't even go to the Zoom meetings with you. And I have found you to be extremely transparent and listening to that piece and addressing it. And as every day that goes by, more and more people are telling me they feel better about the communication and better about the transparency going on with the staff at OPWDD. One more thing I wanted to add was, I think sometimes you guys get a bad rap. In our world, when everything is, a lot of times it's crisis and things like that, parents are looking for hope and answers and solutions and all that kind of stuff. And if somebody, is involved, they will go right to OPWDD and they'll say, gee, it's their fault. I have not found that to be the case. I found you guys and your incredible staff to be always listening and always paying attention and always responding. You guys aren't the end all. You can't fix all of this stuff. I think it's more of a collaboration and a partnership with the parents and the IDD community out there. So I'm excited to have you here today. But like I said, I wanted to mention to everybody that I think it's so important what you're doing here. You're listening, and that's important to the families that are out there that don't have a voice. Commissioner, how maybe a little bit backdrop on how you came to this position and what your thoughts are and going in the very beginning.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. This is really exciting. I get invited as the commissioner to do a lot of events, but being on your podcast was one on my bucket list. So thanks for having me. And thanks for highlighting the work of my entire team. We are the second largest agency in the state of New York, and my team works night and day, weekends, holidays, so incredibly hard to make things better for people. So thank you just for taking a moment to acknowledge that. So I stepped into the role of commissioner about a year ago. I had been the executive deputy commissioner, as you know. That's sort of like the chief operating officer of the agency. So I was responsible for sort of the day-to-day oversight and operations, just the management of all the inner workings of the agency, which, as I noted, are massive, right? We run residential programs, day programs, clinic services, administrative offices. We have safety officers, right? We're just our large operation. And so I had about a year of doing that before I stepped into this role. So it really was a big change for me from moving more from management to leadership. And that was a really humbling experience. And I've been really excited to be in this role. It's been really, I think, extra meaningful to be in the role of the leader of the agency during a time when there is so much fear and uncertainty at the federal level, and just that need to trust government and to feel like you are collaborating with and working alongside state government has been really important to self-advocates and families. So it's been really an honor to be in this role for the last year and a half.
Yeah, that's great. I remember when we had talked way back about maybe doing a listening tour, and you wound up doing that. How's that gone?
The listening tour has been great. So we call them commissioner conversations. Now, I, as commissioner, engage with interest holders, community groups all over the place, right? We have strategic planning forums and town halls, and I do site visits and all kinds of meetings with different groups. But what we designed really in collaboration with yourself was this idea of having more intimate family conversations with the commissioners. So I've been setting up meetings with 8 to 10 families in all different parts of the state. And I go without my staff, without nonprofit staff, and just sit and engage with those families about what their experiences have been in terms of accessing services, experiencing services, their frustrations with the service system, their successes with the service system. And those conversations have been so useful and transformational for me as I understand how people experience state government in New York. And those conversations have been with different community groups, people that speak different languages, people in rural parts of the state, urban parts of the state, really just trying to understand the wide breadth of experiences with our service system, which are different depending on where you come from, what your cultural background is, where you live in the state, what types of services you need, et cetera. So those have been really, really wonderful, sometimes heartbreaking, just very genuine. I have found families to be very open and honest with me, and that co-transparency has been just really wonderful.
Yeah, I remember when we did the one here in the Utica area. One of the things that impressed me the most about you and your leadership team was the fact that when we were going to do this, you allowed me to help find the families in my area. It was so critical to do that because, again, so many times the same voices are down in Albany, the same voices are in front of you, and you're hearing the same things. And my take was always that I wanted a single mom who couldn't drive down to Albany in front of you. I wanted the mom that might be in a wheelchair who's struggling with a son and certain needs and those kinds of things. And I was able to find 8 different families in my area to come. And and I'll never forget it, one of them was a OPWDD basher and on social media, and I invited her. She wasn't even from my area, and she wound up coming on. I don't want to say I coached her, but I talked to her about her approach. I said, you can tell the commissioner your story. You just have to do it a different way. And she did, and I'm sure you probably remember Alexandra. I won't give the last name, but Alexandra's story, and she had a whole different take, and now she is a whole different, does it advocacy a whole different way now, and I'm so glad that she came because look, a lot of times, I remember asking some families, and they said, "There's no way the commissioner is coming here. There's no way," and I said, yes, she is. Yes, she is. And you did. And look, I think it means the world. And those 8 families will never forget that you showed up here and listened to their intimate stories and listened to stories that they're working or they got their hands full with 3 or 4 kids, 2 of them disabled. They can't get in front of you and they feel their voices aren't heard. And for you to take your time and allow them to be heard, Commissioner, I think it certainly impressed me, and more importantly, there's 8 more families in this area right now have a whole different take about OPWDD now because of you. So thank you.
I really appreciate that. I mean, I think that it shouldn't be such a big deal for the commissioner to come, right? My entire job is to be here to help families like those 8 that you mentioned. Something I realized immediately when I stepped into this role was that I was meeting with the same family advocates time and time again. We have the same very strong, very educated advocates who come to all of our events, who know how to reach out to me. And that is so, so important, right? But what I recognized immediately was I was not getting a full spectrum of the experience of the service system, because there are so many more families out there that have a totally different perspective, come to the service system with an entirely different background and set of issues that I needed to hear from in order to know how to do this job. So while you tell me they all remember that visit, right? Like, I remember each family I meet with too, because it helps me understand how to do the job that I do. This is why I'm here. I also come to the system as a family member. So I have a family member with a developmental disability who receives our services, and know from that perspective how overwhelming it can be and how important it is to engage in the process. And so those conversations, as I said, have just been so meaningful to me, and I absolutely intend to continue those into next year.
That's great. Having done this for quite a while, I realized that one of the things I've noticed the most about in my own way, 'cause I used to go down to Albany and do all that kind of stuff, and I just decided to do it a different way. And you realize the complexities of trying to fix a lot of this stuff. This isn't an easy answer. There's no easy answers to a lot of these things that we both hear about. And I think this is why I'm glad we kind of have this podcast and that you're out there too, because people need to know that it is complex. There's not a black and white issue. There's times that I get calls from families that they can't get. They're on a waiting list for a dental for 2 years. They're on a psych eval for an evaluation for autism for a year and a half. And the first thing is to maybe blame the provider agency or blame somebody else. But it's complex because maybe Medicaid doesn't pay it. Maybe the reimbursement rates are not there to cover some of this stuff. Maybe there's not a dentist in our area who does sedation, which is the case. My son's on a almost 4-year waiting list for dental, and I have. I'm able to find the resources out there that are available, and my son is still on a waiting list. So I understand the complexities of that, and I just wanted, our audience to realize that there's not easy answers, but that we're trying to fix this, and that families and I think parents have a responsibility too to work with you guys, to work with the provider agencies, and keep listening on your end, and we have to keep bringing these things up to you guys in that part of it too.
Yeah, it is a complex system, and we rely on our partners in the health side, the hospital side, right, housing, everything. All those social determinants of health are so needed for everyone, and we can't control all of it as one agency. We also have a service system that continues to grow and grow as people age longer, have increased health issues, and more children, especially with autism, coming into the system, right? So the work never stops to continue to try to make it better and more accessible for people. And you're spot on that we all need to do that together.
Yeah, I thought maybe that we'd take a little bit of time, and you guys have done a lot in 2025, and I was wondering if you could maybe run through with our audience some of the things OPWDD has done during 2025, the initiatives, new initiatives, or things that you're looking, or things that you guys have accomplished in 2025. Now that we're at the year end.
Yeah. How much time do you have, Steve? I feel like we had a really, a really busy year. Of course, I was the commissioner for that full year, right? So I feel particularly proud, but we've had a lot of big accomplishments this year. We invested a huge amount of money into our nonprofit. It was a historic $850 million investment that we made to certified residential and day providers, to really be able to recruit and retain those direct support professionals that are so life-changing for people. And so that was a really significant investment and win. And we've seen the starting salaries and the overall average salaries of those professionals increase by like 30% over the last year or so, which is huge. And it doesn't solve everything, but that was a really big win for the field and for people who need those services this year. We also have made a lot of investments on the healthcare side. We got $25 million in capital grant funding this year that will be paid out early in 2026 to enhance access to healthcare. So those are the issues you were talking about, right? With being on a wait list to receive dental, we're giving out $25 million to existing healthcare clinics to expand access. And that's for specifically people with developmental disabilities. Those clinics need to show us how they will expand access to dental care, preventive health care, and specialty health care for that population. And so we're really excited to get to work to expand that access in the next year, but we put a lot of work into that in 2025. We have done the family listening sessions. We did those in 12 different languages with our partners at the Georgetown University of National Center for Cultural and Linguistic Competence. And they have worked really closely with us in terms of how our system is experienced to families of all different cultural backgrounds and different languages spoken, to make some recommendations for us about how we can be more equitable and competent. And that was really important and groundbreaking work here in New York that my entire leadership team, family advocates, self-advocates, and our provider network all worked on together. So that was a really big deal. And I'm really excited to see how we can use that work next year to continue to improve access for those families. In our state operations, just a sort of our own provider network where we are the state provider of services, we developed and opened a set of comprehensive adult transitional homes. So I'm really proud of that. It's a new model meant to take young adults out of residential schools or adults out of other more institutional settings and give them a more intense, sort of short-term residential opportunity with a lot of clinical support so that they can get more independent, and we can build a behavior support plan that requires less staffing and move those folks through the continuum to a more community-based setting. So we've had a lot of success with that model as well. So we've just had so many wins. I don't even know what to focus on. Those are the first few that come to mind.
Yeah, it's so important that, the parents out there and caregivers also know that you guys are doing everything you can to try and move the needle. Look, I've been doing advocacy for a long time. Commissioner, I was one of the ones that didn't think the needle was ever going to move. Up until maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I kind of changed the way I did my own advocacy and tried to do more things behind the scenes, so to speak. And just more importantly, probably just to try and go out there and address some of these solutions that we could do locally. And it was your staff was kind enough to kick me to your program with Georgetown, and what a wonderful thing that was, an experience. You guys sent with Georgetown, they sent a film crew here. They got an opportunity to see some of the things that I was working on here. And now some of those things I'm working on here are going to go all over the state, and the Ability Bus is going to go all over the country. So one person can make a change. It's all caused by you guys listening, and more importantly, realizing that we have to have some kind of partnership. We have to have some kind of collaboration going forward to make it easier for all of us. And I can't be more proud of the fact that somebody said, you know what, let's ask Steve to be involved with that Georgetown thing. And I'm so glad you did, because I'm not really one to I have a podcast here. I don't really like my picture out there, but I do like the fact that we were able to move the needle, so to speak, and fix an issue which is big in disability world, transportation, or an issue where maybe adults with autism, adults with IDD have nowhere to go for rec. And those are the programs that they highlighted in that, the documentary they did. And it's going to help out so many other families. So, again, I can't say it enough. I can say it 1,000 times in here about you guys. I always say it, you guys keep listening to the people on the ground. I think sometimes a lot of us for a long time thought our voices weren't being heard. We kind of get lost because a lot of times we thought as parents, and I did myself, that the providers were getting all the attention, that are out there, the agencies were getting all the attention, and your voice is being heard. And sometimes the parents' voices need a seat at the table too, and you guys have been very good about that. Maybe if you can tell your audience, I know you guys have some committees and things that parents can join or apply to be on some of your boards or committees or advisory groups. Can you mention a couple of them, or?
Yeah, sure. And I just want to sort of echo your sentiments about families, right? They are the largest unpaid workforce in the disability service system and absolutely need to work together on all solutions. We actually just launched a new page on our website that is dedicated entirely to family advocacy. And there are a lot of resources on that page, including links to some of our parent groups that people could join, either just to have some community of other family members, or if you wanted to be more involved, ways to volunteer to sit on some of our advisory bodies. We have an autism spectrum disorders advisory board. We have a developmental disability advisory council with a lot of different subcommittees. And that is a great place for families and people with developmental disabilities to get more involved directly with sort of the policy making and recommendations for the commissioner. We just launched a commissioner's task force on aging this year. There are not opportunities to join that because we've already put it together, but that's an example of one of those advisory boards where we pulled families and other subject matter experts from our larger developmental disability advisory council to really focus on one topic area and develop some recommendations for me. So there's a lot of ways for families to be more involved and to hear from me, meet with us, meet with our team, and really feel like they're part of the system, because they absolutely are.
Yeah, that's great. Going forward in 2026, is there some things on your agenda and horizon that you plan on doing as an agency and yourself going forward in 2026?
Yeah, I mean, 2026 is a huge year. I'm excited. We are on the tail end of our last 5-year strategic plan. So while we finish out some of the goals that we set for ourselves as part of that last strategic plan, we will now be working on the next 5-year strategic plan. So I'm really excited as commissioner to be able to lead that work. We have a lot of transformation that we want to do with the system, changing the way we create services, the way we create rates for providers. There's just so much work to do now on sort of the next life of the service system. And so we will start a lot of that transformational work in 2026, along with spending out the money on the health clinics, which I mentioned before, which I'm just so excited to do. And some other initiatives, which we haven't announced yet, but will be really exciting in 2026, as well as rolling out our new technology consortium with the State University of New York, which is focused on technology for people with disabilities to be able to engage in their workplace, and launching our new waiver service, Home Enabling Supports, which is another technology service for people to live in the community more safely and independently. So we've got so much going on, and I'm really excited to get into it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Do you sleep at all? I'm not sure. I see you everywhere, and I see OPWDD doing a lot of things that I just haven't seen them do before. So I think it's important that the public knows that you guys are out there. Look, as parents, we hear the same stories: the wait list, the housing things. That I'm glad you're doing the thing with the office or with the aging board, because it's. I'm the old guy in the room. I wonder what's going to happen to my son. What happens to the autistic kids that we just adopted, and those kinds of things. And I'm glad that that's out there, and that you guys are looking at that. And I think you've been pretty open about the housing thing. That we all know it's a crisis type situation with the housing. There's just not enough places and parents. That's probably, if I had to say one thing I think parents hear the most, is about the housing part of it. What's going to happen when we're not around? Is something going to be in place? And I'm glad, I'm glad that you guys are addressing that and working with that and understanding that it is an issue to so many families for their own peace of mind, so to speak. And getting us at the table helps. And I think it all matters. And like I said, and I'll say it again, and I've already said it a dozen times, the listening part is so important. I think it gives you a different perspective when, leadership, I've been in leadership. I've had 400 employees under me in a manufacturing environment. I've had several businesses I owned. What made me successful in a lot of those things is because I went down to the bottom layers of the hierarchy and listened to the people on the manufacturing line, or listened to customers and things like that, and got their perspective. Because I think sometimes in the appearance and the perception in state government, in any state agency, is the fact that it's the culture is that one certain way, and nobody's listening. It's not going to change, and they only listen to people who are in their office and they're in a small setting. And I think going down like you're doing with the listening tour and opening up, with your forums and continue, like I said, I don't know how you sleep because I've seen you all over the state on social media and your OPWDD site. I don't know how you get around that quick. I don't know if you have doubles or what, but it's impressive to see that you guys are involved in trying to help us as parents on these roads that we're on.
I do sleep. I am admittedly on the road quite a bit. I am really energized by this job and how important all of the challenges are that come along with it. I love it. I love it. It gives me energy and focus every time I go and I visit with a family or a self-advocate or a provider or see some great new program or innovation. It's what fuels me to do this work. But I also neglected to say, something you said reminded me of our Office of Advocacy that we launched over the last year. And that has been really, really successful in terms of helping us really get some of that direct feedback from families. So we hired a director of advocacy and a team of people that have developmental disabilities and act as advisors to me. And so they work with other self-advocates, other families, sort of navigate the day-to-day issues that come up. And then they work with me and my leadership team in helping really recenter the work of the agency to make sure that our policies make sense, that we're messaging in a way that's acceptable to people, and that all of the goals we set for ourselves as an agency are focused on the goals that people with developmental disabilities in New York State have. And so that has been just a real guiding light in the work that we do for the last year. So I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that also.
Yeah, you guys have a really good, you put together a really good staff. I got a chance to meet your director of advocacy several times. I invited her to an event. She came, and then I just saw just recently some of the people that she met at that event in the autism world. She was helping them with something else with that agency, and again, I think that's I call it planting seeds and being out there, getting out there, and that's a great move that you did with the advocacy part of it and getting her out there, and then also including self-advocates in it too that can give her advice and that can help teach others that are out there maybe how to raise their voices, to speak out and speak up. And so I think it was a really good move. Now, they didn't have that before, right? That's a brand new position, the director of advocacy, because I don't remember ever seeing that before.
We've had some people in and out that were responsible for some advocacy, but this is the first time the agency has had an entire office with a director and all of the peer specialists and administrative support. So yeah, it was a big win for us this year. I mean, and we've been so focused on not just at OPWDD, but New York State under the Hochul administration, very focused on the customer experience that people have working with state government and trying to access services through state government. And so just really shifting our mindset to thinking about everything we do from the customer perspective, people with disabilities, family members, nonprofits, right? The customers that have to engage with OPWDD to make the service system work. And so that has been a big piece of helping us really refocus that vision.
Yeah, the other thing that always bothered me is I've done therapeutic foster care with my wife for a long time, and the kids will come in maybe with trauma or autism, but they'll also have another diagnosis, a dual diagnosis of like mental health. And they come in maybe with autism undiagnosed, and we go down that road because it's prevalent that we need help within schools with all that. But there's a lot of mental health stuff going on, and we can't access sometimes with the mental health piece because we're in the autism piece. And I know you guys have done some stuff. You have that most integrated setting council. You have, I'm pretty sure you guys are working with like OMH and some of these other state agencies, right? Yeah. To try and address some of that dual diagnosed things.
Yeah, we do a ton of cross systems work, particularly with the Office of Mental Health. I talk to that commissioner all the time. She will say that the hardest part of the mental health service system is serving people that have mental illness and a developmental disability. And we've experienced the same on our side, right? People who have a developmental disability, but that is compounded by a mental health diagnosis and sort of the behaviors associated with that. And so we've done a lot of work together to cross-train professionals to develop programs that incorporate both OPWDD nonprofit providers with off the mental health best practices in terms of therapeutic approaches. And they have been just a terrific partner. In the next year, we're going to launch a bunch of residential short-term programs and hospital diversion programs that were a collaboration of both OPWDD and the Office of Mental Health. And so a lot of that work to address that population that have those co-occurring diagnoses is underway and really, as you noted, just so needed here.
Yeah, for a long time, my son's autistic. He has some other disabilities that were cast to the side because we were dealing with the autism part. And like I said, some of these other kids that come through have, because of the trauma, but again, the autism piece, we have to fix that first. And we have to get them into a school setting that's appropriate and put the supports around the child with that. But then the mental health piece, rears its, head. And then we're having behaviors because of the mental health and some mental health breakdowns. And it's just good to know that we're going to have some help hopefully coming on the horizon that can address the fact that, we might have an autistic kid in our house, but he's also got a lot of challenging mental health issues going on that we need help with. So I'm glad that you guys are looking at that cross-system collaboration. I think it's important. Is there anything on the parent part that we could help you with? I look at it. I spend a lot of time with our legislators. I try to do one-on-one. I've done the Albany thing with the groups. I like to more one-on-one. You found that out because I invited you here for more of a one-on-one. Appreciate it. But I'll meet with a legislator here and talk to him. And a lot of times they're not even up to speed on some of the things needed. I'll explain to them maybe something in the old days where one of our kids couldn't even go on a trampoline that are in foster care. Like, that's a regulation, and they don't understand why that's a regulation. Well, that's the part that legislators need help with, I think, because I think sometimes they don't even understand the complexities of the disability world that you and I are in. And is there anything that parents can do legislatively that could help you guys at OPWDD? Is there things that you think need changing? I know it's a loaded, it's a bloated question kind of out there. It could go 1,000 different ways, but in order to move the needle, because I know some things that in OPWDD you might want to change, but maybe this particular thing says you can't, and that's what we would hear. We would hear the no. I'll give you, for instance, and then you can answer, and I apologize for that. My own son, I didn't want him in a group home. I just didn't. I wanted him home, and he can't get an apartment by himself. We built an apartment in our house for him in our cellar. 2 bedrooms, beautiful. And there's a regulation that says we can't get a housing subsidy, and it's not on your end. It's on legislatively on our town end on a certificate of occupancy thing that we need. Our house was built before the laws, and so the ceilings are like 6 inches off. They wouldn't give us a certificate of occupancy for my son, and yet we spent, I think, $35,000 putting an apartment in here for him, and not out there in the community. And we can't get the certificate of occupancy so that he could get, some kind of a help with the housing. And legislatively, that's probably something that has to be changed legislatively, I would imagine. And those are the kinds of things that pop up. And I know it. I can't just say, gee, why isn't OPWDD helping me or paying for that or helping me with that? It has nothing to do with you guys. It has more of a local law that I can't get around. But
yeah, there was so much in that question, Steve. So, we are a service system that is a little bit you've probably heard me say, a midlife crisis. Right, 50 years ago, we took everybody out of institutions, did a really good job of moving people into the community. And now 50 years later, we have a lot of outdated models, outdated rules, right? And it's time to sort of advance to the next life of the service system. And some of those issues people have accessing housing or services through old rules are sort of a symptom of that. But to your question about what parents can do, I think you're doing it, right? Parents are experts in their families, experts in their children. I am a mom who goes to special education meetings for my own son. to advocate for what he needs. And I understand that there's nothing more powerful than a mom who needs something for her kid, right? Or a dad. Apologies for that. And so you guys as family members do what you do expertly. Meeting with legislators is such a great way to use that voice because I think that personal story, that personal experience really helps anyone in state government, city government, county government, right, to understand the wide variety of obstacles that people with disabilities still come against every day. And so you are doing what you need to do as family members. That's how our service system was created in the first place, right? We know that Willowbrook was warehousing hundreds of people with disabilities until parents said, enough is enough. This is not right. And so our system is built on the advocacy of parents. So I trust you and all of the other family members that are out doing your thing to continue using that voice. And that's how we make change together.
Yeah, look, I go back to the old Field of Dreams movie, probably before your time, but how you build it and they will come. And it's kind of how I do things it myself. I build it and then I hope to bring the services in to support what we did. We have a rec center going into Utica right now just for complex care people. It's opening. We have a soft opening January 3rd, but there's nothing like it. And a lot of people don't know anything about it yet. But our hope is to be able to use down the road self-direction dollars. I tied into the veterans. We bought this church. We converted the whole second floor to this rec center. We're gonna have sensory rooms and pretty cool place for anybody with complex disabilities or autism to come with a one-on-one aid. A lot of times they're restricted out there, but we found a need in our area to do that, and we're doing it. And I'm excited about doing it. But where you guys come in is we didn't ask you to come down, and buy us a church and put all the equipment in it that we need to make this successful for our kids. But what we might need is down the road is self-direction dollars. And because we are opening it up to the public, so I know that meets one of the settings things. But those are the kinds of things I want to be able to work with you, and I want families to be able to work through some of these things. I think in the old days it was an automatic just no, and I'm finding you guys to be a lot more interested in trying to find a yes to all of that.
I appreciate that. I mean, we still have our own set of federal rules we have to work under, right? We're a $7 billion customer of Medicaid. And so that comes with the need to enforce a lot of federal rules as well. So we certainly try. We're trying to transition to be the agency of yes. And we do where we can. But if it's anything like the barn you built, I'm sure it'll be an incredible success.
Yeah, this will be a lot more open. There's there's like 12 rooms. It's really going to be cool. There's nothing like it that I've seen out there. And like I said, a lot of times my son used to walk the mall. That's why I built my barn. It gets old. He wanted a place to hang out with his friends and play music instruments and all that kind of stuff with somebody saying, no, you can't do that. But this rec center we're putting in is nice in the fact that you can come with a one-on-one aid. You can come with it's wheelchair accessible. And a lot of times there's rec programs attached to some of the provider agencies in our area, but they're not, the times are off, or there's restrictions. You can't come with a one-on-one aid, or you can't bring that particular person there because they might have complex needs that they can't address. And this one, we're not going to have any restrictions with that kind of stuff. We're going to have staff there and volunteers. And I think that's my take on all of this is going forward Commissioner, is the fact that I think there's a way and an answer to all of these issues. I think we just got to go find a way to do it. And with parents, I think the parents need to step up more, and especially the dads. One of the reasons, I'm out there as a dad is because I'm in so many groups, and there's not a lot of dads out there advocating. And I know there's a lot of reasons for that. They're working, and this, and I think it's just more of a mom thing. It was for many, many years, and I want the dads to step up. And if I can help with that, it's kind of why I'm doing this today, is for dads to get involved and to help the moms out there. I don't want you guys carrying on the whole load of the disability world that we're all on. So
You've really started a advocating trend here in New York. So I give you the credit.
thanks. Look, we're going to be wrapping up. Is there anything else you'd like to say or mention, or going forward, any thoughts
No,
year end or going forward?
I don't think so. I think we're just really excited to keep up the momentum on the incredible investments we've been able to make and the incredible work we've been able to do, really bringing everyone to the table. Continue to work on making everything more accessible with better outcomes in the most person-centered way, meeting people where they are. And I'm so blessed to be in this job, and I was really excited to join you today.
I'm probably more excited than you are about it. That you said yes, but you like I said, your department, you're surrounded by really good people. I've had a chance to meet a lot of them at some of your focus groups and some of the other things I'm involved in. But they've always been attentive. They've always answered. They've always responded, and so I appreciate. Look, it goes back to leadership. I think a lot of times that stuff doesn't happen unless it's good leadership. So kudos to you I'm really glad that you're in the position that you're in. I hope you stay a long time and help us move the needle.
That's the plan. And I am the luckiest commissioner in state government. I have the most committed, wonderful team. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Baer, for being here today on Finding Common Ground's Dadability podcast. Until next time,
continue the conversation by joining our Facebook group. If you're a fan of the show, please join our supporters club. Subscribe on YouTube, rate and review on your favorite listening app, but most of all, share it with your friends. Just one more click or comment can make a huge difference and help us to continue finding common ground.